Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you
Well,
and good evening.
yes, it's great to also have you. Well, let me start by asking, as a team, particularly right now, the candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the just concluded Edo State election, looking at what happened yesterday at the tribunal, how is he?
Well, Dr. Asue Ighodalo is in very high spirits. He had prepared, very sufficiently for the entire electoral process. That is pre-election, election, and post-election. So now we're in the post-election process, and so we are prepared to drive it to a logical conclusion on behalf of the Edo people who gave him the mandate on the 21st of September last year to become the governor and to preside over their affairs. Unfortunately, it was stolen by the APC in collusion with INEC, and that's why we sued INEC, at the Edo State Election Petition Tribunal, and asked that the court reverses the decision of INEC for the several irregularities or several cases of irregularities that we had alleged before the courts. And so we were very miffed and surprised, and indeed the Edo people are shocked that INEC failed, or the judges failed in this instance to submit themselves to the evidence that we put forward before the courts. They failed to work in line with the Electoral Act to obtain the announcement of INEC announcing Okpebholo as duly elected governor, when indeed Asue Ighodalo had the highest number of lawful votes.
So for you would say that yesterday's verdict from the tribunal was a surprise?
Indeed it was, because one would have thought that if truly Monday Okpebholo was duly elected by the Edo people, I mean, it's almost 24 hours after, you would have seen, jubilation, wild jubilation across the state, people celebrating the judgments as a reflection of their votes, but that's not the case. Edo people are largely in mourning. The entire state is in agony because the man who the tribunal has given the mandate to is not the one that the Edo people gave the mandate to. So it is not pleasant to hear that the collective will of the people has been subverted by the judiciary, who they thought should have the imprimatur of the Constitution and the Electoral Act to do what is right in this case, to determine the veracity of the claims we put forward in court, because we're pretty simple. We had three main issues. One was the failure of INEC to do a prior recording of the quantity and serial numbers of sensitive election materials. Number two was overvoting in several polling units. And number three was the incorrection of collation figures by INEC. And so for all these cases, we had tendered documents given to us by INEC and certified by INEC, tendered them before the courts. And gladly, I was happy to hear the judge, or the chief judge, or the main judge in this case, claim that all the evidence tendered in court, documentary evidence, were certified by INEC and were admissible in court.
But the tribunal, okay, but the tribunal, I mean, the reason why it's sort of struck out, your petition and gave the victory to Okpebholo is that it said you failed to provide sufficient evidence to prove the allegations which you put forward. For instance, overvoting. It also said that as regards your polling units, some of the polling units you did not provide as agents to. So my question is, were you really prepared for this as a team?
Well, the conclusion by the tribunal is, to my mind, very unreasonable, because indeed we provided more than enough evidence. If the court is saying that we should have provided witnesses to all the cases we had brought before the court, that was ludicrous and makes absolutely no sense, because we're challenging results in over 700 polling units. Were we supposed to bring 700 witnesses to testify against all those issues in the several polling units? Let me make you understand clearly. In over 300 polling units, we had said that INEC had failed to submit herself to our own guidelines. And what did it mean? There was supposed to be a prior recording of some information of sensitive election materials by INEC to be done a day before the election at the rack centers. This was supposed to be done a day before the election. And Section 72, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act says that where INEC fails to record those sensitive information of those sensitive materials, the elections in those polling units will be invalidated. So let me ask you, if we had brought from EC 25B and from EC 40A, which clearly shows that in over 300 polling units, INEC failed to do this activity, which was supposed to be done a day before the election, how did the court expect us to bring witnesses? Over 300 witnesses to that claim. Party agents were not supposed to be there. It was an exclusively INEC matter. So how did it make sense that the PDP should have brought witnesses to testify against non-serialization, which was a fault of the INEC? Then number two, Section 51, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act explains what overvoting means, where the number of those who voted, the number of vote cast, exceeds the number of accredited voters, that is overvoting. And the law says that the presiding officer must cancel the election at the polling units. And so we have provided from ECSA, these are INEC documents. We have provided the BBAS extract. We have even provided INEC documents uploaded by INEC staff on IREV as sufficient evidence that there was clearly overvoting in 133 polling units. And so, according to the Electoral Act, cancel the results there, regardless of who won, whether it's PDP or APC. If the law says cancel the results there, cancel the results there. Were we supposed to bring 133 polling unit agents in all those polling units to court to testify? That didn't make any sense. When we talked about incorrect collation of figures in several polling units, INEC dashed APC thousands of votes. And we are saying that most of this occurred during collation, not at the polling units. So how then were we supposed to bring polling unit agents to testify or as witnesses in a matter that happened at the collation centers? So this judgment is unprecedented. It is highly ludicrous, and like my brother just said, it's a travesty of justice. We're trying to make sense of it. Is the court saying that all the documents you tendered, even if they're the real documents and they speak to your case, we're not going to consider this evidence in making our judgments, insofar as you didn't bring enough witnesses to speak to the documents? And we're letting them know that according to the Supreme Court judgment in Ihedra versus Opuzodima, the Supreme Court have made it clear that according to the Electoral Act, Section 137, subsection 1, that in a case of non-compliance, for example, it is not necessary to provide oral evidence where the appellant has provided enough documentary evidence, either originals or certified true copies, to speak to the cases. And that's what we did. We provided some witnesses. Yes, some of them were polling unit agents, some were collation officers to speak to the specific cases we brought before the court. How was it that the court was expecting the PDP to bring 700 witnesses to testify? It makes no sense to me, and that is why our lawyers have advised that the best thing to do
we'll definitely come back to it.
To the appeal courts.
All right, we'll definitely come back to it, Mr. Ogbeide Ifaluyi-Isibor. But right now, let's go on our quick ad break. Once we return, we'll be talking about the next steps, your team will be taking to challenge this, because you said you will challenge this to the very last, to a logical conclusion. So what next for the People's Democratic Party in Edo State? Stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still, of course, Politics HQ on New Central Television. And I still have with me Mr. Ogbeide Ifaluyi-Isibor, is the spokesperson for Petitioner, that's Asue Ighodalo, and also the former Commissioner for Digital Economy, Science and Tech, Edo State. He joins virtually. Thank you for staying with me. Now,
thank you, sir.
What next for the People's Democratic Party? I mean, you said that your team will challenge this electoral result to a very logical conclusion. So what's the next line of action now?
Well, having received the shock from yesterday's judgment, the Edo people are suggesting to us to continue to pursue this matter because they feel that they had confidence in the man that they elected, Asue Ighodalo, and they would not allow the tribunal to truncate the victory. And so we are in line with the wishes of the Edo people, pursuing the case to the appeal court. And we are hoping that the corrections will be made, and the judges at the appeal court will look at the merits of the matter we brought before the court, because evidence should play a role in the judgment given. It will not matter if people won't go to court if documentary evidence is no longer tenable and the testament of a witness is more important than the originals or the certified true copies of documents tendered in courts. And so we're taking to court, but more than that, we are trying to appeal, to the judiciary and to the Nigerian government generally, because a lot of Nigerians have lost confidence in the executive. They've lost confidence in the legislature. And most Nigerians also have lost confidence in the judiciary. And so many people were looking forward to the judgment of the tribunal in the Edo case because they know who actually won the elections. And they were thinking that this case for Edo was going to be the deciding factor for us if there's still going to be any faith at all in our judicial process. And we are appealing to the judiciary in this case that the matters that will be brought before the appeal court should be judged on merits. The issues of technicality, I mean, anybody could claim technicality to disqualify a cogent issue, based on issues that they could just bring up from nowhere. Imagine asking us to have provided witnesses for all the polling units that we had alleged non-compliance. It simply made no sense. So we are hoping that in line with what the Edo people have asked us to do, Asue Ighodalo is committed to fighting to the very end to make sure that what is right, and evidence tendered in court should be used in making conclusions by judges.
All right. So basically what you're saying, I mean, this is me just asking you. I mean, looking at what you've seen at the tribunal, does Asue Ighodalo still have confidence in Nigeria's judiciary?
Well, yes, he does. Even with all the excuses that the judiciary would have today, Nigerians generally don't. But Asue Ighodalo, as a seasoned lawyer, he still hopes that the appeal court should be able to overturn the travesty, as dashed on the Edo people by the tribunal. And we are hopeful that the right thing should be done because this is an unprecedented case. Never happened before, where all the evidence tendered would not play a role in the final judgment given just because we did not provide witnesses in all the polling units to speak to the cases. And indeed, like I said before, the PDP provided witnesses even when we didn't need to, because the Electoral Act 137 clearly says that you do not need oral evidence where there are originals or certified true copy of documentary evidence. And that's what we brought before the court. Even at that, we brought witnesses to even speak to that. And we were shocked to hear the judge even almost appear to be the fourth respondent in this case, making mockery of the case and how the evidence fell like a part
you
of
said the judge.
court.
You said the judge seemed to make mockery of the case.
Yes,
How?
we think so, because not having to conclude a judgment based on the evidence is making mockery of the case, and not just of the case, making mockery of the judiciary, because evidence would always matter in court, and that's why they're trained that as exhibits, and that's why they are received by the courts, as evidence. And so we would hope that judges at the appeal section will do what is right for the Edo people. We do not believe that we should lose hope completely in the judicial system. We do not believe that we should now stop talking about voting, because the people can clearly see if their votes on election day would not count, if external forces will be able to decide who becomes a governor or who becomes a president, why then should we vote? So the confidence in INEC, which is fast dwindling, should be reawakened by the judgment the appeal court should give in the case of Edo State, and return the mandate to the man that the Edo people had confidence
Mr.
in.
Ifaluyi-Isibor, I just want to ask you, what if maybe it's pursued to the Supreme Court stage and Senator Monday Okpebholo is still maintained as the governor of the state? If it's not upturned, what will the PDP do?
Well, Senator Monday Okpebholo, with due respect to him, doesn't have the legitimacy of the office of governor by the Edo people, because he doesn't enjoy the collective mandate of the highest number of lawful votes by the Edo people. However, we are in a system that many people feel is not normal. We sadly operate in a system that many people feel is compromised. So if for some reason, I'm not hoping so, that the judicial system is not able to stand up for the Edo people, it will be sad for Nigeria, and it will be sad for our democracy. because that would erode the ethics and ethos of true democracy, where the people's votes should count. And so the question of what will the PDP do? The PDP will have no option, but indeed the people still know who they voted for. The people still know who they had confidence in. The people still know the man who was able to express himself to the people during the campaigns. That's the man they came out to vote for under the rain and under the sun on the election day. And the right thing should be done. We should not get to the point where we excuse illegality just because it's perpetrated by the judiciary or the legislature or the executive. The democracy that we pretend to have today is as determined by the Nigerian people. So the Nigerian people matter. What they say matters. So whichever the way the court rules, we'll still hope that the right thing should be done in line with the voices of the people who truly own the power according to the Constitution.
All right.
The legitimacy of any government is drawn from the Constitution, given powers by the people.
All right, let's switch gears a bit and let's talk about something that recently happened in Edo State, the very unfortunate Uromi killings, where about 16 to 14 individuals were, gruesomely killed, who were en route, and were, of course, later discovered to be hunters, right? The People's Democratic Party, has condemned the killings, but there's also a twist to it. Seems to also initiate a call for a state of emergency in the state. My question to you is this. Looking at how the governor of the state, Monday Okpebholo, has handled the situation, what's your take? And the APC is saying that maybe the call for the state of emergency by the PDP is just an opportunity to foment trouble and upturn peace in the state. What's your reaction?
Well, we largely condemned the gruesome murder of those individuals. The investigation is still going on. We cannot conclude in its entirety what the story behind it really is. Some have said that they were hunters. Some have disagreed with that assertion because they were found with weapons. And they hold the view that Nigerians should not be allowed, or anybody should not be allowed, to travel from place to place with weapons that are not licensed. But since that is still a case under investigation, I will rest that there. But the major points to be raised here is that the PDP was not asking for a state of emergency in Edo State. They were asking for a state of emergency on insecurity in Edo State because clearly the Monday Okpebholo government has failed in her capacity to secure the Edo people. The government has failed to provide for the welfare of the Edo people. There has been cases of kidnappings, rapings, and killings on a sustained basis in the last several months. And never at a time has the governor visited these areas to address the concerns of the people. People are wondering.
I'm sorry to come in. You said that there has been killings and security concerns on a sustainable basis in the previous months.
Yes.
Aside this case,
yes.
Can you please bring us to speed maybe some of these cases that Nigerians might not be privy to and the government may be ignored?
Oh, it is true. Bi-weekly, there are cases of security challenges in virtually every part of the state. If it's not Uromi today, if it's Esako tomorrow, it's Obianot is the next day. There has been sustained cases of these suspected headers invading farms, destroying farms, killing people, and raping women. This has been a sustained case in Edo State, for a while now. And we are wondering that as much as the people have complained about this, they never saw a decisive action by the state government. There was never a time that the governor visited any of these locations to assuage the feelings of the people and to assure them that government was doing anything. This was in variance of what it was under Governor Obaseki, where we had a structured architectural security network that helped us to more or less oversee the entire state, especially cases where we become determined.
What would you said structured architectural security network. I mean, what did that entail under Governor Obaseki?
Thank you. Edo State was the first state in the West African sub-region to have a sophisticated command and control center, where we had emergency numbers 739 and 112 given to the people such that wherever there was an emergency and anybody called any of those numbers, you were going to get a response and you're going to get help deployed to you immediately. So you imagine if in these areas that we have had these complaints of, there was that facility still available where Edo people or Edo residents could call that 739, and we had stationed security operatives in various areas across the state, so that if you made the call, immediately the security station that is responsible for that area deploys help immediately. This would have helped to stem the cases of kidnappings and killings across the state.
So is that number still operational?
Edo security network.
Is that number still
it's not.
operational?
Oh, no, it's not. For reasons best known to the new government that many people think is illegitimate, for reasons best known to them, they totally obliterated whatever the command and control center was providing, simply because it was achieved by Godwin Obaseki, and they did not want to give credence to him for providing a security network. And the people were miffed. That you may not need to like Godwin Obaseki, but if he had put in a security structure to help check in security, you should be able to continue that. It was built by taxpayers' money, not with the inheritance of Godwin Obaseki.
Sorry, may I come in here? May I come in here slightly? Sorry for breaking your line of thought. But there are also, people who are of the opinion that many of these cases did not just start under the current administration, that it was, largely inherited from the previous administration. And that looking at this Uromi killings, for instance, aside the fact that maybe, just maybe, there are security concerns, it's also a reflection of lack of trust in the security apparatus, of the state. Why will individuals, instead of call the police, decide to take laws into their hands? It's the big question a lot of people are asking, that you could have as well just apprehended these people and handed them over to the police. Why did you decide to, carry out justice? So my question to you is this. You seem to say that Governor Obaseki had a squeaky clean record when it came to security. But many are not of that opinion. They feel that many of these problems was actually inherited, from the previous administration. So what's your response? You are part of that government.
The response, yes, the response is simple. Insecurity, has become, very resplendent across Nigeria. So it's not particular to any state or region. It is is it due to the failure of leadership. That's why we have seen that. But in the case of Edo State, what did we do? We had recruited about 15,000 Edo State security network officials, vigilante officials, who we had trained at the police barracks in Ogida to help to support the efforts of the security agencies in the state. So you imagine if all these men who were trained, and of course who were also given weapons, registered by the Nigerian police force, were still stationed at the various areas across the state. This is worthy of note that when Governor Okpebholo came, he disbanded this network. In fact, the IG of police had suspended the network even before the elections. And when Governor Okpebholo came, he completely, destabilized it. So these guys who were trained to help check security were no longer there when the time they were needed to operate was there. What they now had were local vigilantes that, this same government had put together who could not do proper profiling of these suspected hunters. So that is why we are saying that there was a structure put in place before. It may not have been perfect. There's no perfect structure anywhere in the world, even in the most secure cities in America. There's still crime. But what we're able to do, we're able to prevent crime, and we're able to make sure that those who perpetrated a crime were apprehended. But so shortly after the new government came on board, they destroyed the Edo security network, they destroyed the command and control center, and made it impossible to have these 15,000 trained officials help to support the security architecture of the federal government to check in security in the state. So how can you say it was inherited when all the measures that were put in place, you threw them down the drain due to lack of leadership and indecent politics? So the lives of the people should matter. So whether Governor Obaseki set up the Edo security network for vigilantes, or he didn't, or whoever did, so long as there was a structure to help to support the police, why can't we strengthen that structure even? Were they all relatives of Governor Obaseki? These were regular Edo people who are then listed in the vigilante force to help to provide security. These were Edo people.
All
and
right.
this was also helping to create jobs for the locals.
Okay.
But suddenly, you remove all of that and you didn't hire new people to take over that position, new
Mr.
people who
Ogbeide,
were trained.
Mr. Ogbeide
How were we
Ifaluyi.
expected?
Mr. Ogbeide Ifaluyi-Isibor, I mean, just in 30 seconds, before I let you go, I mean, you are the spokesperson for the petition, and that's Asue Ighodalo, the governorship candidate, you know, for the last governorship election in Edo State. A direct message now to the governor of the state, Monday Okpebholo. I mean, after the victory that was declared yesterday, what's your message as the spokesperson to Asue Ighodalo to him? 30 seconds.
Well, for the appeal and the Supreme Court cases, we have about 120 days. So we're wishing the governor very well in the next 120 days, and we're calling him to stand up to the occasion, to protect the lives of the Edo people, to lead them in the direction of peace and prosperity, and to put aside indecent politics of twatting away all the positives of the previous government just for political sake. If there were some good things, you could learn and borrow from it. There's nothing wrong in continuing a system that was working. So our advice and suggestion to him is that we are going to be here as a major opposition party in the state to put him on his toes, to make sure that the people of Edo State are happy, at least for the next 120 days before Asue Ighodalo is sworn in as governor of the state.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.